I remember a time where someone was making me so angry, so upset, driving me crazy, okay, in my life. I had to tell this person a story, and that's what I use. That's one of the things that I use to communicate is storytelling, because I can see stories all over the world. I'm walking in the grocery store and something happens, like it comes to me. But I chose to use a story to help us connect on this disagreement. It wasn't even a disagreement at the moment. It was a lot of tension because I felt a certain way about the person. I felt like I was the saint and the person was the devil. Okay, they was just clearly sent from the devil. If the devil is alive and well, he sit right next to him. Okay, that's how I felt. But for some reason, I decided to pray for the words to say in order to communicate something to this person. And I went to sleep that night and I woke up in the morning and I knew exactly what to say. And that worked for me. I don't know who believes in prayer or chooses to believe in prayer or chooses to practice that they're going to good or chooses to operate in the fruit of the Spirit. But if you are here and you have a desire to choose, I want to be that transition. I was looking at some content the other day. It made me think about this ongoing question I had in my head about being a peacemaker and being a kind person or trying to be a kind person. What does that mean? What does that look like? Who is honest and true? And so from that idea, I thought about how we can seemingly think that someone appears to be good. The scriptures even talk about the appearance of evil. And with this idea, we sometimes assume that because someone does a lot of good deeds, because they say things kind or soft, that they are good. And on the other side, we believe that someone's action or behaviors or the circumstances that they're in means that they're evil or they're bad. So it's this good versus evil idea. When I look into the Bible, I think, how do we actually know when someone else is good or evil? We have this option to evaluate, and the evaluation could be based off of the fruits of the Spirit. Do we sincerely feel that joy, that self-control? Do we see that in a person? Sometimes it's someone can deceive us through these good deeds. They do a lot of good deeds. They do a lot of good things. And even in the scriptures, you'll see that all these good things will mean nothing because it was faith without works or works without faith. And again, I still think about what does it mean to be a peacemaker without being a pushover. So today I want to go through a few videos with you all. This first video is going to be a video from Tim Ross, and he has a guest on the show, but I seen it this morning and it made me get up and record this video, and I want to go through it with you all today. How do you know if someone is truly a good person? When you think about someone who's truly a good person, right? What do you think that is? Well, how does that come across? What does that feel like? You can even write it down in the comments or write it down in your book, but for yourself, understanding what does that mean? From this journey of having this question about who's a peacemaker, who's a good person, who's considered an evil person, I ended up here. And if you don't get any further in this video, I ended up in this place where it matters more about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And if I sincerely want to connect and explore this idea of being the best version of myself. For some who are led by religion or faith or any type of belief systems, there could be a book or doctrine that supports your message. For those who might consider other things, maybe themselves, what is your framework? How do you identify what it means to be a good person? And even though it seems like such a simple question, we all should know what is good. As I navigate this earth, or just America, I realized that some people have different perspectives. And so I'm just going to open this opportunity for all of us to consider a BIDS framework. So the BIDS framework, and I'll just put this on the screen for anyone who hasn't seen my previous video, and I'll put all of the different frameworks that we'll use as we start to engage in more content. But this BID framework is really similar to what we call the thought exchange. The thought exchange is what I use in relation to the stock exchange or the stock market, but thinking about the thoughts, right? So we can either be in the BIDS framework where we're just browsing, we're looking at the thoughts, we're maybe seeing something that we can consider, maybe a new thought we've never thought about before. You can be in ads when you're interested in investing into these thoughts. You want to do something different as it relates to how those thoughts or perspective impacts your life in a positive way or an impactful way or a helpful way. And then CAP is I can use these thoughts and I can create or publish something or respond to a thought, which we see all the time on social media where someone has an idea or thought. what are we going to do with it? But being more intentional is what our goal is. So let's look at bids. So I'm going to put bids on the screen. Bids is browse, interpret, and discern. So the first section is for us to explore the content. We're engaging with the ideas and messaging, and then question to consider what topics, concepts are being presented and what catches our attention. So if anything in the message today catches our attention, we write that down. Then our next step is to interpret. So we want to understand what exactly do we think this content creator or messenger is saying, and what is their main point? What are they trying to communicate or achieve? And then discern. So this is your personal reflection, where you reflect on how the ideas resonate with you personally. Does this idea make sense to me? How does it align or conflict with my existing knowledge or beliefs? So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, and we're going to go over the first piece of content. And actually, I think I'm going to cut this video up. So we'll look at this content for this moment, and then you'll see a series of the other videos and content that I thought all merged together if you decide to stay here and go through this series with me. So let's go ahead and look at this piece of content together.
We could all just choose to be safer people, then the conversations we have would bring us closer together. They wouldn't rip us apart. I want to be a safe human being for human beings. Jesus was safe. The woman at the well, she was safe with Jesus.
Her history was
fractured
safe with Jesus.
Relationships were safe with Jesus. Her misguided theology was safe with Jesus. John's manhood is safe in Jesus' bosom. Peter's denial is safe with Jesus. Judas's betrayal is safe with Jesus. Not Judas's, you get out. No, you're safe here until you choose. You are safe in my presence. On the cross, the accusers are safe in Jesus' presence. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He could have wiped them out. I'm just trying to be as safe as Jesus was. If I can hear your pain and your hurt and not be offended, I can probably get to the real reason why you spoke up in the first place. And if I'm really attuned, I could probably be closer to you than further apart. Racists are scared of what they don't know. Feminists are scared of what they presume and what they've experienced. Like, everybody's afraid of something. And if everybody's safe, if a person is safe, they'll open up in ways and you'll learn more about them than you've ever thought possible. But they got to know they're safe first.
They gotta know that they're safe first. Now let's go through the bid framework. And this is the only framework that we're going to explore today. So now we're going to browse. So we're browsing through the content. In the comments below, let me know, what is your takeaway? You're just receiving the message. Is there anything that stands out? But let's get a little bit more concrete, and then we're going to put on some questions and some things to consider. So this is my first question to you. What behaviors make someone feel emotionally or relationally safe? These are things that we just need to stop and pause and think about. What is that answer? When I say I feel safe with someone, or I feel safe in general, besides the safety I have in my home, or the safety I have with the structure of this building and the trust that I have that it's going to stand up, what does it mean to feel safe when you're in a relationship, when you're not in a relationship and you're engaging in conversation with one another? When I'm on the internet, it doesn't feel safe when I'm listening to different people's perspectives, because one is attacking the other person because they believe that their truth is the dominant and ultimate truth. And there's not room or space to consider that we're all just trying to figure it out. So in my perspective, sometimes on the internet, there are places that are safe and there are places that don't feel so safe. So my next question is, how do I define being safe in my own relationships? So we want to understand what it means to be safe in generally, and in your own relationships, are there points that you feel safe? I don't feel safe if someone is yelling and screaming. If you don't have enough self-control to honor and respect this engagement and the fact that I'm on your team, at those moments, I'm going to feel like I'm not safe. For example, here's some perspectives to consider when it comes to the idea of being safe. I think that the ultimate theme of the conversation is this feeling safe with one another, even like we saw Jesus being safe with the different stories and scenarios in the Bible. I would consider a safe person to be approachable, but also clear about their boundaries. Being safe means offering understanding, not enabling harmful behavior. We're thinking about being a peacemaker, but not a pushover. And the thing about safety is, if I'm in a position where there's no boundaries, that structure is going to fail. If I'm enabling someone in their harmful decision, then that's putting in the position to fail if I have insight. And I don't claim to have it know it all, because sometimes we can come across in our relationships as if we know and we want people to do what we want them to do. The spirit that we use to share all of that will have an impact on how the other person receives it. So then that's where this practice comes in. The practice of how do I communicate effectively? I love the power of words. I believe words have so much power, and there comes a point in time where we've gotten used to just words being said to us without any boundaries, without any structure, that when it comes to being more intentional, it's going to feel awkward. So I want to introduce to you all this idea of creating scripts and practicing until it feels comfortable. And the reason why I believe in scripts is, one, in all of the media that we consume, there's some type of script in play. If there is a movie that we watch or a talk show, even down to our sitcoms, even the reality ones, so-called, there are scripts. And the scripts are simply just the words put together in order for us to understand what we're receiving. And so when I put a script out to say, I want to practice boundaries and I also want to practice being in a safe place, what does that mean? So I'm going to give an example, and this is not limited to my example. I'm a human being on the United States of America's earth, and this is my way of practicing, and I'm inviting you all in. But most of the content that I'm sharing with you all is about us going inside of ourselves. I'm presenting questions for you all to consider, but it's the most important that you sit, pause, and write. Think beyond what we see in the content and use that as motivation to question the things that you may have not questioned before, or even write out the answers to the things about your own life and what you want to see. So now we're going to consider the interpretation when we're receiving content, how do we interpret it? So here, what is the difference between being safe and being permissive? How does safety build trust and respect? So let's look at an example or scenario where a friend shares a personal struggle but has a habit of ignoring your boundaries by calling you late at night. There's a peacemaker response. What do we think the peacemaker response is? If you can let me know in the chat, if someone calls you late and you're practicing, right? You're thinking about the script. What is the script that you're going to put together in order to deal with the situation? And the reason why I like to approach it this way, where I'm not in an argument right now, I'm not in a fight right now, I am happy as can be, but I can sit down, I can start writing scripts. It's giving me the set myself up for success energy. It's giving, I want to live life more abundantly. I'm intentional. I am a co-creator. That's what it's giving. When we can sit down and we can write out exactly what it is that we want to practice in our lives. What is it that we want to see? So if this is the scenario, you can think of any other scenario where your friend calls you late at night about their personal struggles. And this depends on who you want to be. Because some people may not have a problem. They have the capacity to do so. They have the grace to do so. And so they do so. Some need boundaries because maybe they have a family that they also have to take care of, or they are tired from working, or they need more vitamin D, their energy level is low. There are so many different reasons, but all of us respecting one another is not dependent on just being all for one person and not being considerate of the other person. This is one way I try to understand my own life is, okay, I know that I want to be a peacemaker. I know that I want to aim to be a sincere, kind person, and I'm practicing to do those things. And right now it feels like I'm establishing my own righteousness as far as what that looks like. But I also know that I want to be someone who's treated well as well. I don't want to be the person that's doing all of the work. I want it to be that everyone is doing their fair share so that we all feel safe together. This script that we write together is based off of hearing something that you might not naturally say. You might not naturally say it, but practicing it to see where it lands. And sometimes it won't land well. I will say this. I try my best to put my words together in a way where I am setting boundaries, but I'm not being offensive. But here is the thing about life. You don't know what people are going to be offended about. And we'll talk about being offended in another video. But we don't know what people are going to be offended about. But I think about, okay, if someone said this to me, how would I respond? So I'm just going to give an example for this one scenario. The peacemaker response can be, I care about you and I want to support you, but I need to rest at night. Let's set a time during the day to talk. It might not be like that. It might be a different way, but here's what we're doing. We are at least trying to figure out what is it that we really want. Because I've listened to a lot of people, and I love listening to people. I listen to a lot of complaints. And one thing that I noticed is that people will go to other people to complain about their issue. But when they try to communicate that to the person, they do it in a way that can't be received. Like they're yelling, they're arguing, or they're disrespectful, or they don't say anything at all because they want to keep the peace. But the thing is, the same way you might communicate to another person that you feel safe with about what happened, you can use those same techniques and bring it back to the person, the source, right? Who's the source of the person that you had that issue with? And how can you effectively communicate to them as if they are a friend, and practice seeing it that way before they might see it that way? Maybe they are an enemy, and we'll talk about that soon, but maybe they are an enemy. But now we're if we can create our reality, and if we believe in miracles, or if we believe in manifestation, any of these words that we put out there, if we believe in that truly, then how do we practice and create in a creative way to speak kind to one another and to set boundaries, being both the peacemaker and the peacemaker? I don't know why I said both. Okay, that is the scenario. If you have one, let me know in the comments of another one that you want people to consider. Maybe that's not the one. Maybe this is a bizarre situation, and this is for your everyday life. I understand that people have bizarre situations where it was something I don't even want to say on the YouTube, but there's just things that people are like, I cannot be a peacemaker in a situation. What I'm expressing is for the everyday life, the common arguments that we're getting in, to practice getting into these things, because that's not my ministry. Okay. Outcome. So you are supported while maintaining your well-being. So what is our goal when we create our script? We also want to think about the outcome. So if the outcome of my script is, I want to feel like I am supporting my friend, but I also want to keep my boundaries, what's the best way to say that? And so now this is when we become artists. We become artists, and we become these writers and these thought leaders in our own lives instead of consuming everyone else's, and see how creative we can get with leaning and thinking on the good. All right, so last one is discern, and we can actually use this for any of the scenarios that we go over today. And these are just, how do I know if this works for me? These are the type of questions that we want to position to ourselves, because all of this is practicing, it's experimenting, it's really seeing if there's something else to consider other than being negative or complaining or being a pushover when it comes to bringing peace into our lives. Does this approach help me grow as a peacemaker? Do I want to be a peacemaker? Am I maintaining my values while being compassionate? And how do I feel about my response? At peace, or like I compromise too much? So if we can discern whether or not that's happening when we have these situations that make us feel like we are trying to keep the peace, but for some reason we feel like a pushover, then we have to keep adjusting and realigning. Because I'm separating the videos now, I'm going to share this passage with you all that I got from a book called Emotionally Healthy Relationships. It is a journey to deeply changing your relationships by Peter Scazzaro. I'm not sure if I said that properly, but I'm going to share this with all the videos at the end. I love it. I love it so much, just because it aligned with something that I tried out earlier in the year, and it worked. It not only worked for, I'm not sure if it worked for the other person. I know it worked for the situation in general. Like, it didn't end up in a chaotic situation, but it also worked for me. It worked for my well-being and my peace. To see someone who seemingly is an enemy in a different light. And I'll tell you a little bit how I did this. So let me read the passage first. So let's read this together. During Isaiah's time, about 700 BC, God's people were devout. They prayed, fasted, and memorized scripture. However, they also had a problem with the pointing finger and malicious talk. Their relationships were marked by impatience, a judgmental spirit, and irritation. Perhaps their disconnected spirituality sounded like this. I can't stand you, but at least I prayed and read scripture this morning. They failed to see that it is impossible to think about the spiritual life apart from loving our neighbors. Jesus' teaching on love is radical. He goes so far as to say that the degree to which we love our enemies, quotations, those who hurt us, irritate us, drive us crazy, is a true indicator of our spiritual maturity. Another way to think of this is that our enemies are our saint makers. This means God uses to deeply and powerfully transform us. In the sense, enemies are not interruptions or obstacles, but gifts in disguise from God. Jesus repeatedly taught that loving God and loving others are inseparable. Why? He knew how easy it is to compartmentalize our thoughts and beliefs from our actions, that we could pray and even practice spiritual discipline and still fail to love the people with whom we live. And they also pose a question to consider. If it's true that our enemies can be gifts in disguise from God, who in your life might be a saint maker? In what ways might God be using this person to transform you? Now, life is about choices. So some of us may not choose to be more intentional about the way that we speak to one another, the way that we speak to ourselves. Some of us may not choose to do something that feels uncomfortable at the time and moment because of where life is for us, how we're receiving life in this way. And I want to offer grace to anyone who feels like they cannot see someone as a saint maker, an enemy as something to use as a saint maker. And I want to offer grace to yourselves, if it's hard to do so. And I also want to make the space and present an option or opportunity that if we start to shift the way that we think and practice these things and we start to see fruit from it, it might be good for us. And I'm one of those people who have started to do something more intentional. So when it came to these scripts and considering how I want to be spoken to and considering what's the best way to say this but also keep my boundaries, I remember a time where someone who was making me so angry, so upset, driving me crazy, okay? In my life, I had to tell this person a story, and that's what I use. That's one of the things that I use to communicate is storytelling, because I can see stories all over the world. I'm walking in the grocery store and something happens, like it comes to me. But I chose to use a story to help us connect on this disagreement. It wasn't even a disagreement at the moment. It was a lot of tension because I felt a certain way about the person. I felt like I was the saint and the person was the devil. Okay, they was just clearly sent from the devil. If the devil is alive and well, he sit right next to him. Okay, that's how I felt. But for some reason, I decided to pray for the words to say in order to communicate something to this person. And I went to sleep that night and I woke up in the morning and I knew exactly what to say. And that worked for me. I don't know who believes in prayer or chooses to believe in prayer or chooses to practice to think on the good or chooses to operate in the fruit of the Spirit. But if you are here and you have a desire to choose, I want to be that transition relationship for you. I want to be the person or the channel that you come to help you with this transition of thinking on the good, because you choose and you have a desire to do so. If you don't have a desire to think on the good, you don't have a desire to want to have healthier conversations, better relationships, then I'm still going to tell you to come here just in case you find something else helpful. But that's all that I have for today. I hope that there was something either in the video that we shared or in the passage that I read or the experience in general that you can take home with you today. Until next time, hold on to you as much as you can. Hold on to your health, your well-being, and your mind. Be mindful. Bye. They don't have a pause.
I don't know what to say. So I'm hoping that the tone of my voice makes you think that I do. Okay, sweetie?
Thanks, Titus.